All right, so we are back for another episode to talk all things Hyrox in the lead up to your next Hyrox race, whether that's Sydney, Melbourne, something international. We're here to talk about getting to your next Hyrox, why training earlier is always better, and just a little bit of information around how to best prepare for some of the tougher stations as well. So where do you want to start? Should we start around why it's better to start earlier, why earlier is always better, and how we can actually help people do that with a training block?
Yep.
Let's roll.
So obviously, like the more time you spend training, the better the outcomes most likely going to be. So if you're able to start training for your Hyrox race earlier, we absolutely say go for it. It just means that you're able to periodize your programs. You're able to work on all the different aspects of Hyrox that you need to work on. And it just primes your body more and gets you fitter for the actual day.
Yeah, so essentially you've got the staircase analogy, right?
Yep.
The sooner you start, the more steps your 3 to 4 week blocks are each step, and the more time you have, the more steps you can take up that staircase. Whereas if you started later, you might get half the way up the staircase as opposed to getting all the way up if you started earlier.
Yep.
In terms of the ability to do that, what does an earlier training block, say 15 to 14 weeks, look like as opposed to starting 10 weeks out? Do we have more time, more data points? Like, what does that typically look like?
Yeah, so the longer the block, so if we're doing like a 15 to 20 week prep for a race, you can really spend the first block of that programming on technique, which actually makes you more efficient in the stations or the running, for example. So if you're able to spend a good chunk of time on technique before you actually build up to race weight or just above race weight, it means that you're more efficient at race weight going into each station. The lesser time you have in your prep, you don't have as much time to really lay in the foundation. So you'll still do a little bit of technique work, but you don't have that extra time. So it's sort of like you have the two options where you can do a shorter prep and go into race day feeling good, or you can do a longer prep and go into race day feeling efficient, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and knowing just how to approach race day depending on what you find easy or what you find hard.
Yeah, and we typically like to do that for between 5 and 5-ish weeks, maybe as a first block, or 4 weeks?
Usually first 4 weeks, I would say. We do more about the technique at each stations and actually getting technique, refined. And it also gives us a chance to see, as I said, like what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. So programming going forward, we're then able to really hone in on like what we need to work on to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, so that's our kind of first phase of getting you used to the movement, identifying any gaps you might have, and then that lays the foundation for the next phase, which is the main build phase.
Yeah, we build up strength, we build up fitness, we build up all of the stations to a race weight, so that you actually have practice of what you're going to be encountering on the day.
Yeah. So you've got your technique for phase 1, you've got your build for phase 2, which is again another maybe 5-ish weeks, 4 to 5 weeks. And then at the end we do the fine tuning, right? The speed priming, the strength priming. So what does that typically look like in the lead up to race day, for example?
So the last block before race day, we really focus on putting all of the different aspects together. So putting the running with the stations, as I said, like being at race or at race weight or just above race weight. So you're actually used to doing the stations as you would in Hyrox, and then just working on a race plan. That's a good time, that last 4 weeks before the actual race, is working on the race plan of, sleds might take it out of you a bit. So let's pull back sleds, but you can go harder at ski, for example. And it's really like being able to work out the best strategy for you for race day, depending on what your, as I said, strengths and weaknesses are at the stations.
Yeah, so essentially you've got everything from the introductory phase where you get yourself into the movements, you got the build phase, and you go into that speed and that fine tuning phase. And if you kind of add those together, you get to about 13 to 14 weeks. And if you then add in that extra taper week at the end, it takes you 14 to 15 weeks, right? Which is a prime perfect build. You could go up to 20 if you wanted to, as a build, right?
Yeah, especially if someone who's coming off not doing much exercise, we would go more the 16 to 20 week prep. Because you don't want to be thrown into it and then you get like niggles, or especially you haven't been running, having more weeks running is obviously going to be more beneficial. So if you do have if you are able to do a 20-week prep, it's better to do that so we can build you up and get you into it properly.
Yeah, and I think that's the the biggest thing. It's the fact that this is a hybrid sport. You're not just pushing something heavy. You're not just pulling something heavy or throwing a ball at a wall. You've then got to go out and run.
Yeah.
And the ability for niggles to pop up and bring you undone are what we're really careful about, because that's the last thing we want, because it means you actually miss your race.
Yeah.
So from what we've learnt then over, I guess, the past year, 2 years training for these races, I guess for you, what's the main thing that you've seen from a member perspective around how people have gone from maybe not having raced Hyrox before to getting to their first, and then maybe from their first to their fastest? What's kind of the key thing that you see from your end when you're coaching people on the station specific stuff?
As I said, it's about the efficiency at the station. So especially for the members in studio, for example, a lot of them have done the exercises here like consistently prior to going into a Hyrox prep. And it's more about fine tuning them to make them efficient at each station and to get their body, as we said, like primed to work the best that it can at each station. For our like online clients who go from doing nothing to going into Hyrox, it's just about building up their strength and their fitness so they feel strong at each station. And also fine tuning that technique. So, you know, they do have the efficiency, but because they haven't had the previous experience, it's a completely different prep for them. It's going from not doing much to getting thrown into this world of Hyrox. So everything is new and a little bit different for them. So it's making them feel as comfortable as we can for them on race day and making them feel confident.
Yeah, I think the way that we balance the studio versus the online training out is, studio is great because you can see it there in person, but the online gives you that aspect too, right? Because we've got all of our exercises, we recorded them all here in terms of being able to like do, if you're doing doubles, for example, what a good partner swap over looks like, instructions on that, what a good sled push looks like, progressions of the sled push. So I feel like the ability for in-studio guys to benefit from that as well, it actually means they can look at it in their own time. Which you look at the distinction between our in-studio crew and our online crew. The online crew almost do more work because they have to actually sit there, carve out time to look at it. Whereas the in-studio guys tend to just get the benefit of being here and doing it in person. But in terms of the way that we've seen people progress from a station perspective, it always struck me as people going to their first race have the aim of, I want to get through and I want to feel okay at the end. But then when we've seen them do 2 or 3 races, that's where we see the time really just pile off, right? You kind of see going from race 1 to 2, you'll drop 5 or 7 minutes, and then from 2 to 3, you drop another 10 minutes. Like you said, a lot of that comes from station efficiency, but also people when they do more running. And like you said, their body can only take that when they've had the opportunity to do that longer lead-in block and not rush through things. And then also that gives you time for good rest too. So go for it.
It also comes down to confidence as well.
Like
first Hyrox, people tend to be a little bit more conservative with going at each station, and also it's that feeling of being uncomfortable at each station. A lot of people struggle to actually push through that. It's more of a mental battle than it is a physical one. But once you've done like 1 Hyrox or 2 Hyroxes and you get to your 3rd, you know what's to come. You know the feeling of uncomfortable. You know that you can push a little bit harder at each station and you will be fine and you will get through it. A lot of people in their first Hyrox are so worried about burning out and not finishing that they'll pull everything back just to not get in that state of overall discomfort. Whereas, the more you do or the more you train, the more you know what your body's capable of.
And in terms of like going station specific, I have 4 questions or 4 statements for you that I want to kind of work through. Some controversial, some not. But the first one is, the ski erg is losing you more time than you think. So I mentioned that one on the back of what you just said, because a lot of people tend to hold back on the ski erg more than they actually should, right?
I think there's a fine line between that though.
Absolutely.
We don't want you to go out hard on the ski erg and get your heart rate right up and then not be able to recover. But a lot of people tend to go that little bit too slow. Like you should be able to get into a good consistent rhythm, where you're giving it a red hot shot but you're not overdoing it. Whereas a lot of people tend to go too hard and then it bonks them for the rest of the race, or they don't go hard enough and they lose time on the ski erg.
I think the thing that I've seen with that is, it comes back to, and we've said it a lot, is efficiency and technique. Because if you're efficient and you've got the technique on the ergs, and particularly the ski, you can go quite hard, like sub 2 minutes, whilst getting a really, really good amount of recovery.
It's also practice on it though. So if you've done a 20-week prep and you know your numbers on the ski and you know what pace you can maintain without getting your heart rate up, and you know the good technique for that certain pace and your strokes per minute, that's all data that is very useful in a race.
Yep, no, that makes entire sense.
Yes.
The next one I've got for you is the sandbag lunges. Sandbag lunges are the ones that everybody underprepares for. Personally, I was thinking of that one and I was like, well, everyone hates lunges and they hate weighted lunges.
Not everyone.
Not most people hate lunges, and let alone weighted lunges.
I think there's two types of people in the world: people who love leg day and people who don't love leg day.
Yes.
People who love lunges, people who don't like lunges.
Yes, but the vast majority of people severely dislike lunges.
A lot of people don't like it.
So in terms of making sure that you don't go into that station underprepared, what would a progression look like if we were working with someone who had gone from zero Hyrox to getting to their first Hyrox, and we wanted to kind of really make sure they had a solid lunge form, technique and strength?
Yeah, so the first couple of weeks is just focusing on the technique, focusing on stability through the ankles and building up, basic body weight strength in the lunges. We then go to progressive overload, where we add weight to those travel lunges, we add distance to the travel lunges, so you're building up that more endurance in your legs. And then when we're priming, you might go overweight, so we do more weight than what we would in race day, and we work out some sort of tactic for them to use. So a lot of the times with my clients, I'll say something like, when you get to the lunges, you're going to do 10 steps, you're going to have a 3-second shakeout, 10 steps, 3-second shakeout. So it gives them something to practice for race day as well, knowing that that's the strategy that they're going to have going into it, rather than just going like full hog for, 30 steps and then legs are fried. It gives them that mental tactic.
And I mean, that's a good segue into the next one around how to pace your burpees so you don't blow up, right? It feels like it's a similar strategy.
Yeah, same deal. I would usually say depending on the person obviously, do 5 to 6 burpees, have a rest at the bottom of your burpee when you're on the ground, count 3 seconds in your head, then go again, do 5 to 6. It's the same with doubles. We always say do 5 to 6, all right, and then do that quick swap over 5 to 6. So rather than just going until you feel absolutely taxed and not being able to recover to go again, you actually have like those checkpoints of 5 burpees, 3-second break, 5 burpees, 3-second break.
Yeah. And the last one is the rower is actually one of the most important stations out there. The rower is one of the most important stations to make sure that you finish strong.
Yep. Yeah. So the rower is that midway point. It's the one that comes after burpees. And it's station number 5. So once you're done with your rower, you know that you're over halfway throughout the whole event. It's the only one that's seated. So obviously you can get your heart rate down, your legs get a little bit of a breather because you've taken your body weight off them, and you can get into a rhythm without really overdoing it. So the rower is really the station that you look to try and get your heart rate back down, regain some sort of energy, and almost reset and refocus for the second half of the race. It's also the station that people will take on some sort of nutrition as well, either just before they get into the rower, usually into the rower station, they'll have a gel or some chews or something, because being seated and having a less intense station actually lets your body digest it better. And as I said, like, use it as your station to reset of, I've now done 5 of the stations, I've only got 3 to go. Yep.
And that means they've also got a little bit more of that, lactic flushed out, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
So I guess the last couple of things I wanted to touch on is, Sydney's coming up, right? So a lot of the focus now is how do people stop winging it to go into Sydney, right? Because sometimes a lot of people will be like, oh, I'll just train generally, right? I'll just get my general training right, and then going into a race like Sydney, they'll get prepared and get ready to go.
Yeah.
But I guess the biggest question is, how do we, if we're talking to someone who hasn't done a Hyrox or might have done one, what does stopping winging it look like, and how would they actually go about following a plan? What would that plan generally look like?
Well, we need to sit down and have a chat with them to see where they're at, what their goals are for Sydney. Like, is your goal just to finish it, or do you want a certain time? Do you want to hit certain paces, certain times at the stations, that sort of thing? And then what they're able to commit to their training. So as we said, like, a longer prep is going to be a better prep. So I think Sydney's 16, 20 weeks out.
15 weeks.
Something like that. So ultimately, like, I would start now. If Sydney's your race, I would start now. So that we are able to plan and periodize it, so you're getting your body getting into the groove, getting into the technique, we're building the strength, building that fitness, and then we're priming it for the actual race.
I'm glad you answered it like that, because you shouldn't trust a coach that gives you a plan straight off the top of their head without answering, I need to talk to you first. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so in terms of, say, yourself, right? Because it's probably easier to give a bit of an overview of yourself. If you were coaching yourself or someone that has done a Hyrox before, or that might be new in the studio that you know, or someone that you know,
Yep.
how would you kind of put together a broad plan of, cool, for these weeks I'm going to do this sort of approach, what the middle of the block looks like and what the fine tuning looks like?
So usually the first third, which would be like the technique and the efficiency, you might do something like 2 Hyrox sessions, 2 strength sessions, and 1 or 2 running sessions, depending on strengths and weaknesses. But it's just to get into the groove. And then from that, we can sort of see where we need to tailor the middle third to, in terms of, they're really good at running, but their Hyrox stations aren't that strong. So we might pull back a run for the moment and add in another Hyrox, or, you know, their cardio fitness is really good, but they don't have the strength they need. So we might pull a Hyrox session out and add in another strength session. So it's able to like tune the body to what we need to work on for that middle section. And then the last section is really just putting them all together. So we might combine the running sessions with the Hyrox sessions. So they're working on the stations under fatigue from the running. And we might pull back strength just a little bit. So only just do 1 strength session in there, just because the main focus is getting the body primed for the aerobic capacity of the actual Hyrox race.
Yeah, so in terms of those 3 distinctions, it's pretty clear that we progress again all the way through. What would a normal makeup of a session look like in the initial phase? So, you know, we've got 8 different exercises to get through plus running. What would, in phase 1, that kind of technique and that initial phase, what would a session typically look like?
So in phase 1, we'd usually split the Hyrox stations into 2 separate workouts. So 1 workout, you might focus on the 4 first stations of Hyrox, so the ski erg, the sleds, and then the burpees. And then the other workout might be the other 4. And it's just getting into the groove. And then each week we'll sort of change up the combination of the exercises. So you're getting different stimulus from different exercises. And then it's all about the timing as well. So, you know, the first couple of weeks we might do shorter timing or shorter distances to hit, and then we build that up into more of an endurance capacity.
And then that's our initial, say, block that we have. Where do we go in the middle block then? We start to progress that again, and we develop that further.
So middle block, your sessions get a little bit longer. We increase time or distance for if you're doing AMRAPs or if you're doing timed rounds, everything gets increased. So you might start going, say, first block, you might only be doing like 100 meters on the ski erg. Middle block, you'll be going to like 400 to 500 meters or 300 to 500 meters, depending on your fitness, and building that up. And there'll be a lot of like AMRAPs or a lot of supersetting where you're doing back-to-back exercises with minimal rest, just so we get the heart rate like working and the body working under fatigue as well.
And then we go into our final block, right, where we're in that fine-tuning phase. What does that, you know, pick a workout, what does that look like?
So fine-tuning phase, we mostly try and do it as if it is the event. So usually I would structure most of the exercises in the order of what the event is. If we add in running, there'll be running before each station. Some of them might be like supersets of 2 exercises, but I like to try and keep the exercises in the way that you're going to approach them on race day. So again, you get your body used to, you know, wall balls are at the end of the event. So I want you to do those wall balls under fatigue, so you can see what it feels like having them under fatigue, rather than doing them at the start of the session where, you know, on race day, you've already, you know, been out there for an hour and a half, 2 hours. We want to make sure that you're able to do them efficiently and effectively while being absolutely cooked.
And I think that's the benefit of having you with all the strength conditioning and the Hyrox conditioning support, and then me with the run support. We can program those 2 things together. And whether we're working with someone remotely or working with them here in studio, we can back-to-back those 2 things. We can get people out, pre-fatigue them on a run, or get people to go and do their run and get pre-fatigued, and then they can jump into the gym or jump in here and do their session, and, you know, have that level of fatigue in their legs that will simulate what it will be like trying to finish towards the back end of a very difficult and potentially very hot Hyrox.
And it's also about the practice of getting heart rates down after the running.
Yep.
So being able to go into a station, learning how you can like control your heart rate a little bit better at the station so that you've got more energy for that station and you're not completely blowing up by like the rower.
Yep, and I think from my perspective, I've seen a lot of people midpoint through those burpees, right before the rower. They're at the burpees and they're just holding on to the fences for dear life, just waiting.
That one guy that fainted or was like fainting in Melbourne.
So that's one of the biggest things that we want you to avoid, right? And that's the whole purpose of having the program so definitively thought out and based around you, is that we want you to avoid any of that. We don't want you to get to the finish line feeling absolutely cooked in the sense that you hated it. We want you to get to that finish line feeling strong, like you enjoyed it, and that you actually want to do another one. Because ultimately, if you're well prepared, it should be hard. It should be really hard, but you should be enjoying it, right?
It should be hard but fun.
Yes.
It should be hard, but after you do each station, you should feel on top of the world because you finished it feeling strong. And
you're ready to get out there and do that run to hopefully recover a bit.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I think that covers off the end-to-end of why it's so important to start early and give people some tips on how they can effectively structure their week and their plan, and also what it looks like to kind of do that with us. If there were any kind of last tips that you had for people, given it is still so early, what would it be in terms of getting them race ready and confident come race day in Sydney or any other race they're going to do?
It would be make the commitment to the race and make the commitment to the training.
Yep.
Don't wishy-washy, don't jump between what you want to do versus what you can do versus, don't change programs halfway through. It's, if you want to do a race, commit to the race, but also commit to the prep that comes to it.
Yep.
And as we said, like the longer you prep, the easier it's going to be for you on race day and the more confident you're going to feel as well.
Yep.
I mean, I think Brisbane last year, I did a 4-week prep leading up to Brisbane and it wasn't the most fun time of my life. And I wish that I'd done a longer prep. So
I went into Perth Hyrox after a fractured foot and did, I carried the fitness I had from a half and a full marathon before it. Didn't get much training in because of my foot. And it was not enjoyable.
You hated the sleds and stuff.
The earlier you can start, the better, because it does actually make all the difference. And it's simple conditioning, right? Like do something more, your body gets used to it, it gets better at it, rinse and repeat. It might not get easier, you'll just get faster, as the old adage goes. But as we are recording this, we've got 15 weeks to go until we get to Sydney Hyrox.
Yes.
So, whether you're going to do it on your own or you want to help, good luck. And if you want to help, well, you know where we are, you know where to find us. We look forward to hearing from you. Anything else?
Nope.
Cool.
Cool.
See ya.
Bye.